Thanks for what you do with your podcast and all the rest. You're doing a great job. Hope everybody keeps tuning in. You get a lot of good info, a lot of insights, understandings of how to get strong, how to stay strong, how to use your strength.
You do a great job, dude. You make things better than they are in real life, I think.
If you don't follow Massenomics, y'all do it. Social media, website, everything.
Massenomics.
Welcome to Massenomics, the world's strongest podcast. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Massenomics. Make sure you go visit Massenomics.com. There you'll find the rest of our powerful content. While you're there, check out our store and buy yourself some of that sweet Massenomics gear.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 140 of the Massenomics Podcast, the world's strongest podcast. Tommy and myself are here again today, as usual.
Yep, just like we always are.
Yep, but I've moved over 3 feet to the left because we have a guest with us. We've got Big Brad Neitzel. How's it going, Brad?
I'm pretty good.
Brad, you've been on the podcast before. Have you been on once or twice? Is this your second or third time?
This is the third time.
Okay.
So once at Tyler's house, once in the cities, and once at my house.
Yep.
You're kind of making your rounds.
just moving up in the world.
It's kind of like on Saturday Night Live. The hosts always talk about how many times they've hosted
you get the
show.
same people over and over.
Yeah, now you're on your third. You're getting into a pretty exclusive club being on the show for 3 times now.
Like Ryan probably is the only person that has more co-hosting spots than you.
That I would think so. I don't know who else has done it more than 3 times. Man, that's
I'm really thinking hard, but I don't think anyone has.
That's rare air.
It is.
Are you honored and privileged?
I am honored. Or is it just, am I the only one you guys can convince to go this many times?
We don't need to go there.
Yeah, everyone else did it once and like, oh, that's what you guys do? Like, I'm not doing that again.
Man, once was enough.
Brad, you're from, what is just your general background for those out there that hadn't heard the first times, like where you're from and what do you do?
So I'm originally from Wisconsin, and now I live in Minneapolis, and I just graduated from chiropractic school.
So did you just graduate?
I graduated in May. Yep.
So now you're cracking backs and taking names.
Cashing checks. Hopefully one day at least.
Yeah.
That's the name of the game.
So I don't know if you wanted to talk much about this or not, but what are your plans for the future as far as career-wise then, now that you graduated? And
So I'm in the process of opening my own gym that's going to be north of Minneapolis, and I'll have my...
Is it going to have the world's largest collection of treadmills in it?
Oh, obviously.
I thought so.
We'll probably have like one. I'll sit in the corner.
Okay.
And then I'll have my clinic attached to that as well.
okay.
So I'll be opening in 2019.
It'll be like a compound of just...
It's where I'm basically going to spend the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Do you think for job security purposes, like you could intentionally get people to use improper lifting techniques, like to make sure that they keep coming back for your chiropractic service?
create a whole
like the gray area.
You could create a whole series of videos with improper lifting techniques and just have them playing all over the gym all the time.
I mean, if you can create a problem, find the solution.
Yeah, usually you find a solution for an existing problem, but here you can actually create the problem and the solution and put them together, and you get rich on both ends then.
Yep.
It is the perfect plan.
Yeah.
The perfect business plan.
Yeah, I do like that. What about your lifting background? I mean, you've been lifting for several years now, and what do you compete in, or what's your most recent competition?
Yeah, so when I was growing up, I raced motocross for 10 years, and then I did my first powerlifting meet in 2011. I did a few bodybuilding shows in high school, and then I started Strongman 4 years ago now, and I've been bouncing back and forth between powerlifting and Strongman since.
So what are your best powerlifting numbers in a meet, or
So,
I guess when's the last time you've done a powerlifting meet?
July.
Okay.
So my best numbers from there was 672 squat, because I missed 705 for depth, 402 bench, and then I pulled 760 that day.
And what's that for a total then?
It was 1835, I think it was.
So you've been tracking upwards, obviously, over the years. So would you say you're now on pace? What you'd be closing in on is getting closer to a 2,000-pound total?
Yep, that's gonna be the goal for the spring.
Okay. So you've got a meet plan that you're probably going to do, and that would be what you're hoping for. So what would the breakdown be to get to 2,000 for you?
It'll probably be a high 700 squat, like I think it was like 770.
Is high in reference to the depth or the?
So that's I'm gonna squat as high as I can and still get those 2 lights. And then a 440 bench and a 800-pound deadlift.
That wouldn't be a bad.
Good even numbers.
Yeah. And that's in the 198 class.
Yep,
right?
I'm gonna cut from 302 to 198.
What about your weight over the time? I mean, you're the biggest now that you've ever been.
Oh, yeah.
I would
Yep.
say. But like at the start of your lifting, what did you weigh, or how has that changed over the years?
I think my very first meet, I was 242, and then I did a bodybuilding show, and my first strongman was at 220. So I was 220 guy a couple years ago.
That's hard to picture now.
And will this meet be 308?
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm not gonna cut to 75. For
Yeah.
this.
Well, I don't know. Maybe you're gonna just push it even more.
Oh,
Show up
no.
weighing 400.
And you've done, so that's kind of your powerlifting numbers and some of your powerlifting background. Now, more recently, you've done a couple big strongman competitions. What were some of the lifts that you put up there?
So I did Strongman Core Nationals at the end of October, and there was a 325 axle.
And where was that at?
That was in Missouri.
Was that the first time you've done like major traveling?
That was the first national strongman I've done.
You've
Okay.
probably qualified other times and could have done it before. Or?
Yeah, I've been qualified every year,
Yeah.
but it just hasn't worked out. Like the one year I was going to do it, I ended up tearing my bicep like 2 months before it.
How long ago was that?
I was in 2014.
Oh, I didn't know you actually tore it before.
Yep. tore it right off.
Ah.
So
So
did
when
they-
you're giving Tanner advice here,
Yeah, we're
it's
Yeah, this is
It's
firsthand
coming-
experience.
okay.
So,
Okay.
I was just curious now. I never thought. I don't think I've ever asked you before. So then, when they reattach that, did they drill through the bone and pull it through and tie it off? Is that how they do
Yep.
that? Yeah.
Yep. So I tore it. I had like as far as bicep tears go, it was like a perfect tear of the tendon off the bone. So then they went in, pulled the tendon back down. I think they drilled 2 holes in the radial head there,
Yep.
and then they weaved the tendon in between the bone there.
So is there any chance, or how often does someone, after they've had that surgery to reattach it, does anyone ever re-tear that, or is that stronger than
Usually the odds are higher if you're tearing the other one than that
Yeah.
one again.
Yeah.
Because there's a greater surface area now of attachment for there. So the odds of tearing that one again are smaller compared to the other one.
They should just the bicep tendon should be made a little bit better to begin with.
Dude, biceps suck.
like make them out of metal or something.
I don't want to tell God or whoever it is that's making people how to do it, but or
something to think about.
evolution, I guess. I don't want to tell evolution how to do it, but if they could make the bicep tendon stronger, I think a lot of strongman competitors would be happy about that.
I would be very thrilled about that.
So how did you fare at nationals then?
So I ended up 5th in the 300-pound class. So top 5 isn't too bad.
No, that seems
It's
pretty.
a respectable
Yeah.
finish.
What would
Was there more than 5 people that competed?
There was. There was more than
okay.
5. Yep.
Okay.
what was nationals? Is that a qualifier for the Arnold amateur at Columbus?
Yep. So I think they took the top 10% went to the Arnold, and then the top 2 super heavies overall got pro cards.
Oh, okay. So 10%. Like how many then? What place would you have to be in to
Yeah. How
make it to
close
the
were
Arnold?
you?
So I think in the 300s they took the top 3. I think it was.
Oh, so you were just outside.
Yeah. So like last year there was like almost twice as many people there. So
So
technically
5 would have made it.
top 5 would have
that
made it
sucks.
last year. Yeah.
So you went to it hoping for that outcome, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
my-
you weren't going to
My number one goal was to qualify for
yeah.
the Arnold there.
So how did it? I mean, you perform. Did you perform up to your standard for the day, or do you feel like you could have done something different to make it, or
I mean, I definitely was the strongest I've ever been for that because
Yeah.
it was a really heavy contest because
Yeah.
there was like and plus there's two overhead events there, which isn't my strongest events.
why didn't
so
they
would
have
you
2
say-
deadlifts?
I know, right?
Exactly. So would you say out of like just getting a draw for events, this was about the worst draw you could have
Yep.
got? Yeah.
Probably.
I would say it is with 2 overhead events.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah, because there was the 320 axle and then the dumbbell was 220.
well, and even the deadlift event is not probably the deadlift event that you would choose if you were to pick a deadlift.
No,
like,
'cause
wouldn't you rather have a bar in front of your body than a?
because
Yeah.
it was a 750 basically side handle trap bar deadlift, and it had axle grips on it too, no straps. So I think I got like 5 reps there.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure if I had a barbell, I would have got more with just a barbell.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So your performance though, you didn't underperform. You'd say
Nope.
you went in and did what you were capable of, and you're satisfied with that. So what was that feeling like then, knowing that you kind of, it's not like, well, damn it, it wasn't my day. Were you disappointed, or obviously you were to some extent?
To some extent, because I didn't get my main goal. But
Right.
I mean, I like the last event, because this was the first contest I've done that was a 2-day event too.
Oh yeah.
And then the last event was the medley, which was a 300-something block carry, 300-something duck walk, and then sled drag. And I ended up winning that in the 300s.
Yeah.
So I at least ended it on a high note.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For like the 300 guys, I could at least move the best.
But for people that haven't done big competitions like that before, like, did you even know at the time that you knew you did well, I'm sure, at that event, but do you know on the spot, like, that you
Nope.
yeah, that would be weird to me.
Oh, so yeah, you don't know, like, going into the last event.
Nope.
Okay, I got to get first here to.
Because they ordered us for the last event in the order you were placing, and I wasn't doing that great because the event before that was at the 220 dumbbell, and I zeroed that, as did like 3/4 of the guys there.
Do they reorder you based on your finish of the prior event, or your finish combined of all the prior events?
So before every event, so the first 5 events was on your previous event, and then for the last event it was your overall placing.
I don't like when they base it on your previous event. That's not as good.
It
as
just
if they
feels like
base
it can
it
start
on-
to put you in a hole in a
Right.
hurry.
Well, yeah, because like
right.
I zeroed the dumbbell, so then going to the next
whatever event after that, it kind of screws you a little bit. Whereas if they reordered it based on your
Overall placings.
you probably would have been in a better spot. But I mean, I suppose there's so many people there and so many moving parts. It's easier to order you based on just your prior events placing than it is to figure out the score. Because like at the Massenomics Strongman Showdown, we've done that both ways before. The first year we did it just based on your prior event because it was simpler. The second year we did it based on your total score of the day, which it went off really well and everything. But I know on the back end of it, there's more work to be done.
Luckily, we have a state-of-the-art scoring system, though, so it's very easy for us.
That brings up a really good point here. Probably the biggest competition you did this year that you've never done before was the Massenomics Strongman Showdown. That we didn't even talk about that. So, what did you expect of that? Going into it, not having been there and seen it before, and what was your what did you think about it?
So that was by far the biggest crowd I've ever seen on a strongman contest.
And you're not, just to be clear, you're not joking. Like,
No, I'm
because
not
we
joking
say a
at
lot
all
of things
about
like
that.
that as a joke on here. And
But it's just because South Dakota has an insanely large strongman fan base, right?
Like there was a bigger crowd there than there was at nationals.
yeah.
Like legitimately, more people were
We're
watching.
pretty good promoters over here.
Yeah. Don't you think that's fun? Like when
it is fun.
When you're going and here you're at the Strongman Showdown, you're the center of attention. Whenever you're going, there's nothing else going on, and all the eyes are on you. Whereas something like nationals, there's many people.
5
there.
lanes going at once. I think there was.
Right. So you might have a couple people over in the corner that are like cheering for you and like watching you, but for the most part, there's just so much shit going on that you can't even tell. But did you feel that would like? Well, I guess the backstory on the event that you did, you had a little bit of an injury, so you didn't get to do.
Yep.
Because what were you going to do going into it?
We were going to do a stone over bar head to head, which I thought would have been super cool to watch.
Yeah.
That would have been really fun. But so then we switched it to dumbbell,
Which is my favorite.
which we were kind of in a tight spot. We were trying to figure out an event that you and Tim, who you're going against, could both do and still be competitive against each other. We couldn't switch it to a deadlift, because then.
Well, and the thing that they probably don't remember, but there's a size difference between you and Tim too,
Right.
which made things a little challenging.
But he's an exceptional stone loader. It's probably maybe his best event. So it was, even though you're quite a bit heavier, it's still going to be an entertaining and
close.
competitive event. But then, because of that big size and weight discrepancy, there's pretty limited of what other events could be competitive.
And I'll give it to Tim too. Like his technique on dumbbell is just
Oh,
flawless.
he's a technician.
Yeah.
I felt like watching him go that there was just no. I mean, I don't know if he.
Watching it seemed like it's not even a strength thing for him. It's purely technique, and as long as he just keeps doing his technique, he will get this forever.
Yeah.
Well, I think we did almost 10 reps with it.
Yeah.
And
I
his
think
last one
so.
and first one looked identical.
Yeah, they did.
And had we done that event over again, the Atlas Stone was going to be a last man standing Atlas Stone. So we just made the dumbbell press last man standing, and I guess I probably didn't realize how many reps you guys were going to be able to do at that. And I don't know, aesthetically it probably not ended up being the best event ever. We probably would have done that just a press out or a clean and press for reps or something like that, because it got to be more of just like a grueling
A slugfest.
Yeah, it was almost like, the crowd is like, hope one of them just misses soon because I think they're gonna die.
Well, and then we did that and went straight into that tug of war, and I did die. I'm pretty sure the picture you guys took at the end, I wasn't even in it because I was on the ground dying behind it.
Oh, I never even thought of that.
Yeah.
I don't think you are.
Yeah, you were the last. You were event 10.
Yep.
Because we were gonna end with the Atlas Stone because I thought that would have been a pretty fun one, which you also would have been probably dead.
Yep.
Equally.
Probably even worse.
Yeah, probably worse depending on how long that went on. But the tug of war was much more brutal than I think anyone
first
expected.
one was just I think only a couple super heavy truck pulls have ever made me feel like that before.
Yeah. Did you? And Brad was on the best team, which is the red team, but it just wasn't the winning team on that day.
Tug of war winning team though.
We definitely won the tug
Which
of war.
I think is really the main event everyone cared about.
But did you see the scoreboard is still up at Massenomics
I did see
Gym,
that.
so
I had to walk past it every time.
no one can forget it.
People don't forget.
So you did do that, and you did one other big competition, big strongman competition this year, right?
Yep, I did the USS Strongman in Fargo. That was 3 weeks after Nationals. That was a qualifier for the Arnold Classic. Where was it? South Africa.
South Africa.
Yep.
Yeah. So how did you do? I guess.
So I got second in that one to Kevin Fairs, who's a pro strongman. He's been to Strongman Champions League twice. He's won USS Nationals, Strongman Core Nationals, Arnold 105 already.
What was the final score then? Was it close?
I think it was. I didn't see the final score, but going into I think it was the third or fourth event, I was 2 points behind him.
Okay. So you were competitive.
I was close.
Yeah.
And there was a group of strong super heavyweights. Jacob Daigle, who also did the Massenomics Strongman Showdown, he got third, right?
Yep. He actually, me and him ended up really close at the end.
And Trevor Simmonsma, who also did the Massenomics Strongman Showdown, did he get fourth or fifth?
I think it was fifth.
So that's Trevor. If you've is a big, strong guy, and carried a 1,000-pound yoke at the Strongman Showdown, and he got fifth.
I think he got second in stones too.
Yeah,
because he was only a few guys were able to load that 405.
Yeah,
wow.
So that puts in perspective how good the super heavyweight competition was.
Yeah, it was probably one of the most stacked super heavyweights I've been in.
Yeah,
especially for local stuff.
So had you got first place at that, you would have competed at the Arnold South Africa, and is there an amateur Arnold South Africa?
Nope.
That was someone would have been someone. Competes at the Arnold would have been competing at the Arnold Columbus would be competing in that.
So I think Jerry Pritchard did it last
year.
So would you have gotten your pro card then if you won that?
So technically how the pro card system works is the Strongman pro card system is only a US thing.
Oh, it is.
And it's only a Strongman core thing.
Okay.
And that wasn't a Strongman.
No, this was USS.
Yep.
So technically you've done a pro contest, so I would think you'd be a pro Strongman then.
But the coolest part to that about me is you would have been there competing against maybe Jerry Pritchett or maybe Dimitar or someone. Or
ideally Dimitar.
It even could be Shaw or Thor because they've got to compete they got to go somewhere during the year to qualify for the main Arnold. I don't think either of them did that one last year, but some of those guys are going to be there competing at it. I think they strategically see who's like Shaw and Thor don't sign up for the same one.
So would you have traveled to South Africa if you would have?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Because that's a really cool thing that the U.S. Strongman's doing is they're having all these Arnold qualifiers for pro contests. So you can have an amateur guy show up and then able to qualify and gain the experience of these pro events.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's why the competition was so good stacked then, though, because everyone wanted to go. And did you know that the guy that beat you, I forget his name, but did you know that he was going to be there competing? Or
So I saw he signed up like 2 weeks out. I'm like, you
you just had to do that.
Yep.
Where's he from?
I think he's from Utah or
so he was
Colorado or
traveling
something.
for this thing. Okay.
But I suppose that's what he looked at the event and he said, "This is my opportunity to."
He saw an opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Had he not,
What could have been, Brad?
Yeah.
Could have been.
Yeah.
Yep.
But is that the path that you're taking? You think? Are you gonna? I mean, are you gonna continue to pursue the strongman thing and try to make Arnold Amateurs in Columbus maybe next year, or try to make an Arnold qualifier next year, something similar to this year? I mean, are you gonna continue down that road?
Yep, I think that's the goal. I'm going to pursue more so than powerlifting is try and qualify for a pro contest.
Yeah.
Because even for U.S. Nationals in June, which I think is going to be the next strongman I do, they sent, I think, like 2 guys to a Strongman Champions League live last year. They sent 1 guy to a different Arnold last year. So there's a lot more opportunities popping up for that.
Yeah. And that's kind of one of the topics we had talked about discussing here is managing, because you do both powerlifting and strongman. In any given year, you're probably competing in both of those contests. So that's kind of what I was curious about talking about is
Finding a man that can do both.
I do both. But how you manage that in a given year, whether you're doing both 100% all the time, if you're doing one 100% and not focus on the other at all, or how you balance between the two back and forth.
So depending on what contest you're doing, you always have to have your main focus for that, whether it's going to be a powerlifting meet or a strongman competition. And then basically the biggest difference between the two is going to be how you program your squat and bench and then your event training. Because your deadlift's going to be, you're going to have a deadlift no matter if you're going to do powerlifting or strongman.
Right.
So then with that, I would assume then the big thing is you're probably spending minimal time benching when you're getting ready for a strongman competition, right?
So I usually will bench every week. Except
still with strongman?
Still with strongman, except when I get about 3 weeks out from strongman. That's when I usually don't bench anymore. Because I found benching, because I have more of a narrow grip on bench anyways, so that just helps with just my lockout in general, I think.
Yep.
And it seems that when you stop benching for longer periods of time, it's one of those things you just detrain.
Yeah.
Especially a lot of technique work.
And right now you just finished a couple strongman competitions. You're going to be focusing on powerlifting coming up. So what's your training going to look like then going forward as far as your exercises that you're doing?
So now I'll be focusing on powerlifting, so more of a strength block, I'd call it, because I think nationals for strongman 6 months out, so then I have a solid 3-month block where I focus more on strength. So the biggest difference is I'll get back to more heavier benching, and I'll get more to back squatting again, because usually when I do strongman, I'll do a lot more safety squat bar for squats, because I think that transfers real well for strongman. And then the event training will just be a little lighter.
So you're still going to do event training?
Oh yeah,
throughout. Yep. And how does a week actually structure as far as what days of how many days a week you lift and how many you're doing events versus not, frequency on squat, bench, and deadlift, and frequency of event training?
So I usually always train 5 days a week. So there's 2 pressing days. One's more of a bench focus, one's more overhead focus.
So will you bench press first on your bench press focus day and overhead press first?
Yep.
On your okay.
Yep, and then all the accessory work is depending whatever I need at the time. Usually it's a lot of tricep work, shoulder stuff like that. And then I always train back somewhat on almost every day, because if you look at the strongest people in the world, you're usually going to see the strongest backs, and that's strongman or powerlifting. You just need a strong back. And then I'll have a squat day, a deadlift day, and then an events day.
So you are saving all the events for one day then?
So I'll usually do 2 to 3 events, except with the only thing I like to switch on that is yoke, because usually yoke is the one event that just, if I go heavy on yoke, it just kills me.
Right.
That's the one thing. I know some guys, you're saying Trevor can do yoke weekly.
Yeah.
I can't do that. So I like to do yoke after squatting.
Okay.
Because then I can't do as much on yoke, but yet you're still getting that like sub max work in.
So then, like on your event days, then if you have like 3 events in mind, like you said, you are doing 3 usually. Like if you have 3 in mind, like are you doing those 3 like week after week after week, or are you still switching those out quite a bit? Like how do you feel like you build proficiency in these? I guess is.
So depending on the contest coming up, like usually on any given Saturday, if I have like a technique kind of overhead, like a circus dumbbell or a keg, I'll do that work on Saturday. If it's just like a log or axle, I'll just do that on my overhead day then.
Oh.
And call that
makes
good
sense.
there.
Yeah.
I'll usually do some kind of grip event on an events day, whether it's farmers, frame, whatever I have coming up. If there's stones, I'll usually do stones like every other week.
Mm-hmm.
And then some kind of moving event.
But like, so if you're working circus dumbbell, like, will you decide like, yep, I'm just gonna like focus on circus dumbbell for like a month and just keep doing it like every week, or how do you decide to do that?
So for that, since it's so much technique, I mean, usually I don't go as heavy on that. I can do that almost every week then on that Saturday then.
Yeah, and circus dumbbell, because it's so much technique and not necessarily upper body strength, I would say you're not doing that on your pressing day then, though. You're doing that on your event day.
Yep.
But if you were doing an axle bar event or a log, you would always include that on
my overhead day.
pressing
That'll
day.
just be my main main lift for that day then.
Yeah. What about intensities or percentages on that Saturday, that event day? Are you always pretty sub max on that stuff, or as you're ramping up for a competition, you start to take higher percentages, or how do you?
Yeah. So
that?
like my whole training, it's not super complicated at all. Usually, like I'll try and hit a PR in that event like 2 to 3 weeks out.
Okay.
So especially for yoke, like I've done contests where I had like a 950 yoke and I only went up to 800 in training.
Yeah.
So are you, like, when you look at your like whole prep, are you kind of like doing like someone would with like powerlifting, where you're kind of like projecting numbers that you have out there, or is it like you're kind of feeling it out as you go, as the weeks go by?
So especially for the moving events, I'll kind of take those like a more of an RPE scale based on the day, because depending how beat up you are from the week, and usually the moving events like medleys and stuff like that are more conditioning anyways.
Right. Yeah. Makes sense.
So, and then for the yoke, I really like to do like conditioning work for the yoke too.
Mm-hmm.
And then the biggest difference with the yoke and squat training, depending on powerlifting and strongman, is I'll alternate weeks on those. Like, so I'll squat heavy one week, then do like conditioning work on the yoke. Mm-hmm. And then the next week I'll do more like, we'll call like lighter box squats, and then I'll do a heavier yoke. So those will alternate weeks.
Yeah. Because you said you do your yoke work on squat day after squats. Okay.
Yep.
Do you think that between your event day Saturday and then maybe your yoke work during the week and that sort of thing, do you become more fatigued? Does it make it harder for you to recover for your basic 4 days of lifting throughout the week, throughout the next week, or do you think it's an do you ever feel beat up from it, like it's too much? Or
So I'll always deadlift on Fridays, and then I'll do my event training on Saturday.
Okay.
So I'm always beat up a little bit for the event training. So then, in theory, I couldn't go as heavy, but it's worked well for me to keep in that lighter events, so that I know if I don't deadlift the day before, I'm going to be more fresh for it. And then if you ever do have a 2-day contest, that you're basically conditioned for that if you deadlift the day before you do events anyways.
Right.
So then with all of this now, you're doing your own programming and everything, aren't you?
Yep.
Okay, so how did you even come into that? Because I think that's probably for a lot of people one of the most confusing things is doing their own programming. Like most people are relying on a template or a coach or something else. Like how did you come about like the knowledge?
So over the years, I've had people help me with programming. It's more of like bouncing ideas off of each other, like seeing stuff. But a lot of it's been trial and error for me because I'm 29 and I started lifting when I was 16. So a lot of it's just figuring out what works and what doesn't work. And yoke's the only thing where I've actually tweaked my back on.
Okay.
On really heavy yokes. Like I can deadlift all the time, and I rarely ever actually injure my back.
A deadlift is a lot more controlled and like you have control over the situation.
There's a few less dimensions you're worrying about than on the yoke too.
Yeah, so yoke's one of those things that I like to train more some max in general.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll do a lot of conditioning work with yoke too, where you only rest like 60 seconds between runs at whatever percentage it is for the day.
So do you feel like one is more challenging than the other, like programming for? Or do you just comfortable enough with both of them now?
I think yoke is more hard to program for the day because there's just so many more components that are going on at once. And I'm not as efficient in yoke as I am deadlift because I've only been doing yoke for a couple of years and I've been deadlifting weekly for over 10.
But even like in powerlifting versus strongman, do you like find that one is easier to program than the other for you? For
me, I think powerlifting training is a little bit more predictable based off how my training's been going.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because with usually every powerlifting meet you go to, like, you have plenty of rest time. You know what's going to basically happen.
Well, and you have a
that
pretty
day.
good idea leading into the meet, like how things are going too. Like.
Yep. I mean, with Strongman, like the one in Fargo, that was probably one of the fastest contests I've ever done. Like we did all 5 of those events within like 2.5 hours.
Oh, really? Oh.
So between the really heavy overhead medley, the 750 axle deadlift for reps, it was a 650, 750 frame. The finger was decently heavy, and then the stone run. I think it started at 315 and went up to 405, and we did all that within like 2.5 hours.
Yeah, that's fast.
To me, that's a mark of someone running a meet that has their shit together.
That knows
a
what
little
they're
bit
doing.
Because anyone that's been around it has certainly been the alternative where you're sitting around like, what is going on? Like, what the hell are we doing?
Why are we here right now?
Yeah, I've been at strongman competitions that you don't get out of there till like 4 or 5 in the afternoon.
That sucks to me. Like, I would much prefer the alternative of being a little tired for the event. Like, everyone has the same disadvantage at that point, but it's just mentally it's easier, I think, for me to like. If it keeps
just
rolling,
any event where you just start to feel like fatigued from just being there. That's never.
Well,
ideal.
Well, I basically died in that's part of strongman because like we had that 750 axle deadlift for reps, and there's only 2 of us that even got it off the floor. And then I was lucky because Kevin went first on that, so I knew I only needed 4 to win that event.
Yeah, that always puts.
Had you gone first,
I probably
would
would
have done 6.
I probably would have done more like 6 because you just don't know, so you can't risk that. And then basically after that, like I was about dead after that. And then the frame carry was next. I'm like, okay, so I just deadlifted 750. Now you have to run with it.
This is your reward.
Yeah. And I bet that was probably only a half hour apart, if that.
Yeah. Oh, that's surprising.
I've got 2 questions that are kind of the same but a little different. You might have the same answer for both though. So, do you think if you were just to focus on powerlifting and you weren't doing strongman at all, say over the past 2 years that was the case, would you be better at powerlifting than you are now? Would you have better numbers or would you have worse numbers? I mean, it's just purely speculative pretty much, but I'm just curious what your opinion is.
If I had to guess, I think I wouldn't be as strong.
So if you weren't mixing in strongman, you're saying that's giving you, you're building strength in probably other areas that's helping you carry over.
Yeah, so in theory, if I only did powerlifting training, I don't think I would be as strong. If I only did powerlifting competitions with some strongman events, I think I'd be stronger.
Okay. So if you weren't competing in strongman,
yes,
but you still utilize strongman in your training, you're saying that, as far as looking at just powerlifting, would be the best.
Yep. If you
result.
wanted to maximize powerlifting, I think using strongman movements, especially in the off season or beginning phases of a training program, would definitely help.
But you're also saying that when you actually compete in strongman, maybe you're taking it to such an extreme sometimes, and you have to focus, make it your primary focus at periods of time that it might actually hinder.
Yeah, because you have to pull back.
Building.
You have to pull back in your back squatting and you're benching a little bit.
So the flip side of that, the other question would be that if you were just focusing on strongman for the last 2 years, weren't competing in powerlifting whatsoever, do you think you'd be any better at strongman or worse at strongman? Would you have fared better or worse in the competitions, or do you think it would be?
I think had I not done so many powerlifting meets, I think I might have fared a little bit more, because in strongman there's so many different movements you have to be efficient in. Like I did a couple powerlifting meets last year. I think I did 3 of them last year, which might have been taking away from strongman, obviously.
That 3. I mean, 3 is a decent amount for a year. Like, that's a lot for a year.
So I think I did 3 powerlifting meets and 2 or 3 strongman last year.
Yeah. I mean, that averages out to be every other month as a competition.
Yeah. So basically, like, I end a contest and start a block for the next contest.
So what do you like about powerlifting specifically, and maybe in comparison, what do you in the trade? What do you like better about powerlifting in comparison to strongman?
So I like the powerlifting aspect of performing those numbers in a competition. Like, anyone can do something in the gym and call it a gym PR, but when you actually take it to the platform and perform on the given day that you're supposed to, adds that whole other, like, just justifying that you can do that.
Yeah, and that's a point that's really hard for people to understand until they've
big
competed.
time.
Like,
That's actually an epidemic of our problem.
Oh yeah, I mean, like, we could do a whole episode just talking about that. Like, until you've actually competed, where you're not in control of the setting, you're not in control of the time clock, you're not in control of the music.
It's not your favorite day. Like,
you
don't feel up.
Yeah,
you
might not be feeling the best. Like, until you've been in that situation and still have to, you signed up, you still have to go out and compete, and things aren't perfect. Like, it's really hard to even say. Yeah. Like, you're missing out on a whole thing of strength sports right there.
I mean, yeah, you anyone in the gym can have that perfect day where the stars align,
right,
and they hit that PR they haven't touched in 2 years.
Right.
But to, like, okay, on this date in 12 weeks, I have to be here, I have to perform, adds that whole other aspect to it.
Big time. And I always, like, caveat it with it. It's certainly okay for people that don't have aspirations to compete. It's not saying, like, you suck because you don't
your
compete.
lifts don't matter. Yeah.
But you really can't compare it head to head versus someone that, versus numbers that someone does actually competing, because it is a completely different experience.
Well, and then anything outside of a squat in the gym, you've already done lifts before that,
Right.
Like, how often in the gym when someone's setting a bench or a deadlift PR, have they maxed out in 2 other lifts before? Like, you never,
Right.
it'd be so dumb to do that.
Right.
Unless you're doing a mock meet for yourself. But most people, when they have their bench PR, they didn't also max out in squat before that,
Yeah. And just my personality in general, like I train so much better and smarter when I am training for a contest, and that's just, like, I just need to compete.
So you talked about what you like about powerlifting then is, the actual competing on the platform and everything, but what do you enjoy about strongman that maybe powerlifting doesn't offer, or what keeps you coming back to strongman instead of just doing powerlifting?
I mean, it's just the fact that every contest you do is different. Everything's different. Just squatting, benching, and deadlifting can get boring over time.
And that, I mean, that kind of is the nature of those meets, is that it's almost supposed to be as uniform as possible,
Yep.
Whereas with strongman, everything will be different.
And that's just one of the aspects I enjoy about strongman so much. And it does combine the fact that you don't have to be strong, but you have to move, you have to be conditioned, and all those other aspects into one too.
You have to kind of be an athlete a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
You have to be at least fat-athletic, at least a little bit.
Which, if you were only allowed to do one, to compete in one, which would you choose?
I think I'd choose strongman for sure.
Yeah.
Wow, profound words, Brad.
Strongman for sure.
Okay, how about this? Who are you more impressed by? The strongest
Tommy or Tanner? You can think about that
yes,
one.
that was the question. Glance that at that. Get some time on that one. The strongest powerlifters in the world. So we'll say, Andrei Milanichev, Eric Lillibridge, whoever you want to throw in there, or the strongest strongmen in the world, Brian Shaw, Half Thor, that group of guy. Who do you think is granted they're different, and it's probably not even fair to compare them against each other, but just who do you think is, more impressive to you?
That's a hard question.
Yeah,
It is.
But
You got me thinking now, too.
I think
you can answer.
I think I always go back to the aspect of almost any strongman can do a powerlifting meet and do well, but not every.
This is a relevant topic because Half Thor is competing in a powerlifting meet in a couple weeks here.
But I don't think, in general, any powerlifter can go and do strongman.
You're saying some powerlifters maybe could,
Yep.
but you're not just any powerlifter. There's going to be a lot of powerlifters that couldn't be successful at a strongman competition. What do you think, Tommy?
See, that's kind of what I would go with. I think I'm more. What was the original question? Who are you more impressed by?
Yeah.
I think I'm still more impressed by the strongest strongman, just because one, their physical stature, they're freaks. Like, to get to that point, you have to be that way. But then just their, I want to say athleticism. I mean, they all have a certain amount of athleticism. Like, you don't get to that point, like, not being coordinated and not having conditioning and all of these other things, like not being able to move. Like, you can be really good at powerlifting and have almost none of that. Like, you know, and so that's why I think it's just me being impressed. I'm more impressed by a top level strongman.
I mean, having sat front row at the arguably the biggest strongman competition of the
yes, and that is the perfect example.
We
go to that, and I'm sure, like, even just for comparison, go to the U.S. Open. Like, I'm sure it would be great sitting front row at the U.S. Open.
Right.
But I don't think I'm going to get amazed and just.
No, it's like
I'm not
going to
feel this. I'm not going to feel the
you
same
know,
thing at front row of the U.S. Open that
Right.
I'm going to feel at the front row of the Arnold.
when you're sitting at half Thor's feet and you're looking up and it's like, oh my God, you know what, you know, it's just
those guys are just larger than life.
yeah, right,
They are,
right.
and there is more of a spectacle to it, and it's not a fair comparison because
right.
it is.
That's
it's
I
very
did say
different
that
things.
it's not fair too, but
It's you're almost comparing like the most specialized of specialized you can get in anything to kind of a more established sport.
right, because powerlifting, no matter is what it is. It's just going to be squatting, benching, and deadlifting 3 times. So it doesn't matter how good someone is at it. Like, that still is all that.
It's
sport
almost a
is,
component of it. You know, a component of strongman is kind of what it sort of is in a way.
Yeah, it's not to say that the best in the world at powerlifting aren't amazing.
Oh yeah, I
You know,
mean, like that day we got to see Milanichev warming up in the cage, and I could have sat there all day and just watched him.
Oh,
Like,
I think he's one of the most impressive.
Yeah.
and he
powerlifters,
absolutely is, and it was really fun to watch, and I would be totally willing to do that any day of the week. But if I absolutely had to pick, I would still pick like wanting to see some very high level strongman.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the best thing is we just got to convince Larry Wheels to do a strongman.
I
We'll
was
see.
just thinking that same thing. Do you think that'll happen someday? Do you think we'll see that eventually?
I don't know.
How do you think he would do? We've talked about it on here. I
Because
think
he
did
seems
an
to have,
episode.
he just seems to be like athletic in general.
I mean, he's
And he can
so
he's pressed
stupid
over
strong.
400
I
overhead.
mean, he almost tied Thor that one day.
yeah.
No
Did they
overhead
press
pressing.
420 or 4 something?
Was it 440?
440, I
on a
think. Yeah, it
barbell?
was 440.
And like, it's one of those things that I think he'd be really good at some stuff, but the fact that he's, and I say this in quotes, only 270 pounds.
Right, right.
And only like what, 5'11" or 6 feet tall.
Like some of those strongman events, like mass moves mass.
right.
Like, but I guess we'll see.
Yeah, it'd be curious to see. And how about Thor then? Do you follow Thor's training a little bit, just like everyone does in the world, I suppose, that lifts? But if you don't know what Larry Wheels and Thor do in lifting, like,
You're kind of like
you don't.
missing the boat here.
I'm very curious how you came across this podcast.
So how do you think Thor's going to do? We did an episode on that kind of too. I mean, and there's probably been better evidence since we've done the podcast of like kind of what it's pointing to that he's going to do. What do you think?
I mean, I bet he's in total 24, like in his first meet ever. Because squat around 9, pull around 9, bench almost 6.
That's kind of like where we kept getting to too.
Yeah.
Like that was.
Did you see his 539 bench? Or I think that was a PR he said. I think.
And it didn't seem overly tough. Like,
No.
No, it's just one of those things like he's just never benched.
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
not
I
a
know.
bencher.
That's where it shows.
Like-
Well,
yes.
it's no doubt if he was training for bench for a year, I believe he'd be benching over 600 pounds. Like
I mean, when you can press almost 500 pounds over your
Right,
head, you think you'll
right.
be able to lay on something and press it? Like,
yeah,
Like you almost feel like with him though, like the size of the bench has to be like a detriment to him. Like it's just for how wide his back is. And then it'd be like almost like us laying on a 2x4.
Yeah.
That's,
You know,
what
it's
it
just
is.
like it's not doing you any favors at that
Yeah.
point.
Do you have a? Yeah, I mean, you have a wide back. Do you bench on a wider bench? Would you be able to go to benching on a?
I mean, I bench 95% of the time in a fat pad.
Yeah.
Like, I just love that thing.
And that's a whole different ball game than benching
Yes.
on like the skinny like normal pads you see.
And
in
that's
the
one of the
gym.
biggest things when I do a powerlifting meet. Like, I have to like take like 3 weeks to get used to that that smaller pad again.
Well, even we have 2 elite FTS benches in the gym, but we have one that has the the wider pad. I don't know if it's 14 or how wide it is.
It's really, really close to the fat pad width if it's not the same.
And then we have one that's 2 inches narrower,
which puts you at more like your standard kind of like IPF width.
Yeah, it's an IPF width of the bench. And wasn't it last year? Weren't you like
I
you had
always
been benching
struggle
on the wider
I
one?
always struggle, yeah, because I was benching the wider one because it feels better.
Yeah.
It absolutely does. And I don't have a huge back by any means, but switching back to that, you lose that like 2 inches, and all of a sudden, the bench is
The 2 inches makes a big difference.
That's what she said.
And then the one we had last year was even a little skinnier too, wasn't it? Was it maybe half an inch to an inch smaller even?
Yeah, it was probably a little bit.
So like
skinnier,
going from a bench that's maybe 14 inches wide to like 11-ish.
Yeah.
I noticed it big time. And then for me, the other one too is like that bench didn't have any grip on it.
Yeah.
So with me, I have a little bit of an arch. So like losing my arch, like not being able to have leg drive because I'm sliding out in a narrower bench, it takes like 25, 30 pounds off my bench like instantly. And with a couple of weeks of training, I was able to get a little more used to it. But I have to be way more conscious of like tightness in my upper back and shoulders on those narrower pads, I feel like.
You're getting your own gym ready, so you've probably been acquiring equipment and.
Oh yeah, I have
like
a two-car garage that's completely stacked with equipment right now, and an enclosed trailer in my driveway full of equipment that I need to find somewhere to put.
Buying equipment is fun, isn't it?
It's
not the paying for it, but just like the
it is fun.
Like the hunting for it.
Yeah, it's like just picking out Christmas toys for yourself.
It's sort of like
time.
because you're probably not buying a ton of like just new stuff directly, are you?
I haven't bought anything new
So
yet.
so with that, it's kind of like a little bit of treasure hunting, where it's
Yes.
like, ooh, what am I gonna find, and what's the price gonna be on it? You know?
Well, I did pick up a bunch of machines from this place in Wisconsin that I literally drove out to the country, went to this dude's old barn shed, and there was just these machines sitting there.
And the question with that a lot of times is, and I'm sure Tanner, you've had the same thing, is like, how do these people come to acquire these things?
I've gotten some stuff from some pretty weird places before that you're like, oh.
And it's like, these people definitely don't lift. And if they do, they don't lift in a way that would necessitate them having this piece of equipment even. Right?
Yep. These were all stacks with like 300-pound stacks on them. Like a pain in the ass to move, but dirt cheap.
That's the way to do it.
That's the name of the game.
Yep.
I mean, by the end of it, if you're able to acquire all your equipment used like that, you're saving over 50%.
Oh, well
of the
over.
cost
Easily,
that it would
yeah.
to buy all that stuff new. Like it's crazy how much cheaper you can buy it used than new. And for most of it, outside of just maybe a difference in purely aesthetics, there's no trade-off for quality or what the equipment does. I mean, a lot of it is just
It's
pieces
paint.
of iron.
It's just like the biggest difference is paint is or isn't chipped. Like that's usually what it comes down to.
Yeah, well, that's basically all you have to do is maybe reupholster a few things, maybe paint a few things, get some rust off a little bit.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, even worst case, like you can go back and sell that stuff for the exact same price.
Right.
Yeah, it's already like depreciated as much as it ever will.
And you're lucky you live in the Twin Cities where this is a great market for.
You're in more of a hub for people in general.
For sure. But even because I've looked Kansas City, like some other regional, regional larger metropolis areas, and I do think Minneapolis is a good spot for equipment.
You can find a lot of.
And I wonder why that is.
I don't know. And there's a few equipment distributors there that they kind of buy and sell some used stuff too. I don't know why that is, but it's there.
It's just
It
there.
just must be enough people and
that kind of want to be active and then change their mind and sell it.
enough wishy-washy people.
Yeah.
So then with all this, have you ran across any like unusual pieces of equipment or like pieces that you're really excited about that?
Yeah. What's your favorite couple things that you have?
There's two of the things that I got for a pretty good price. So I got an incline bench and a seated overhead military press, both with the racks that come forward and unrack. So like the easy
really?
unracking.
Cool.
That's kind of like the same style you see with like sort of the people almost do like a cheater monolith with that too, don't they?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Those are probably expensive pieces of equipment. I
got
normally.
each of those for $30.
Whoa, nice.
I drove out to some dude's shed. He's like, "Yeah, I just want these out of here."
Yeah.
That's awesome. And the seated military press, like that's one that's like nearly impossible to like start taking off weight from behind your
Yes.
head.
Yep.
You know.
Well, we had one. That
yeah,
was
we
a
did.
Yeah.
But
fixed
it's impossible.
You couldn't
to,
have used it
Yeah.
without a spotter, carrying it out 2 feet
Yep.
for you.
And then I also got a old school Nautilus pullover that's still like on the chain.
Oh.
So like one of the things like Dorian Yates used to use.
Yeah.
Like I got
so
one of
I
those.
can't picture what we got. Pull over like.
So it's like the arm pads are right here.
Uh-huh.
You like pull over like that.
Oh.
Yeah, it's just
I've-
one of those like
I'm not
old
sure I've even
school.
seen one of those
like
before.
Dorian Yates used to use one.
Have you come across any hammer strength plate loaded equipment?
I have.
That stuff's
I-
kind of like,
those-
that's
those-
pretty
I-
premium, isn't
those
it?
I
stuff-
really want the plate loaded hammer strength chest.
I actually saw one in Minneapolis for like $250 the other day.
Well, text me.
Loaded chest, like as push out.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
you're
pushing in front.
yeah. I don't want the one where you lay down and bench like a bench
Yep,
press.
I know
want
exactly
where
what you're talking about,
You're
yeah.
seated vertically and
The handles are usually
yeah,
neutral
right
too,
here,
aren't
and you
they?
go like this. And I also want
The one in the back
a
one.
back one. You know,
Yes.
I want one. They make a few different angles and stuff, but I just want to get one chest one and then one of the back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as far as machines go, Hammer Strength is one of the more premium ones, aren't they?
Yeah, so for finding cheap hammer strength is a lot harder.
And the great thing about hammer strength is that I really like plate loaded equipment because moving around like our leg press or not a leg press, our leg extension or leg curl, any of
All those
those
stacks are so heavy. To
they're
move.
so heavy. Whereas then a hammer strength equipment that
You just put it in. And,
Yeah.
and I like plates and stuff anyways, and it looks cool, as far as like a power lifter or that sort of thing.
Yep.
Like it's just cooler to load plates.
To put
Yeah.
plates on, then
Yeah.
change
Then
the
to-
pin on a
yeah,
stack. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, even those machines that say they're like only 400 pounds total, they're just so awkward to move.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It might be 400 pounds, but 320 of it is on one spot, and it's in the weirdest spot.
Yep.
And the whole rest of the area is, another 50 pounds.
So are you gonna have strongman equipment?
Oh yeah, like we basically have all our strongman equipment ready. Like we already have like a dozen kegs, 4 logs, a couple dumbbells, a couple yokes, farmers. All
Did
that
you
stuff.
find your kegs, were they already loaded, or did you have to go through that process of
No,
loading them?
so actually we found a guy on Craigslist that was by my parents' house, a brewery.
Oh, and so you got the used kegs just from them.
Finding kegs can be a tricky process.
Yes. So they're brand new kegs, but they're useless to a brewery because they don't seal anymore or something.
Ah, okay, so that worked out good then.
Yeah, so we have a dozen of those.
Yeah, that's nice.
Do you know approximately the timeline of when that'll be open, or not necessarily yet?
So we're hoping for by spring at the latest.
Oh, it's right around the corner then.
Yeah, it's gonna come by fast.
Will Tommy and I be able to get like a free day pass?
I mean, I suppose I can hook you guys up.
We'll see what happens. Don't want to make any guarantees.
I mean, I know how much money you guys make on those lift shorts.
Too much.
I'll be going towards the Brad's Gym Fund.
We should. You don't have to even pull it up, but we should do our big lift segment.
Oh, yeah. We should.
And this week we're not going to talk about Larry Wheels. We're going to talk about a guy that's here today,
Brad Night Moves Neitzel.
Oh, yeah. Damn it. I wish I would have introduced you to that at the beginning. That's worth talking about, too, that your nickname is Night Moves. Has anyone started calling you that since...
Nope. I had multiple people ask me. I'm like, why do they call you Night Moves?
For the Strongman Showdown, everyone got, whether they liked it or not, got a nickname.
Yeah, you
know?
have to have one, right?
And Brado's Night Moves, and I think that was I think that's a great nickname. Are you going to be back for the Strongman Showdown next year, do you?
I will be back.
So
yep.
Night Moves will return.
Yep. The return of Night Moves.
Probably not to do circus dumbbell.
Just let me deadlift.
Yeah, we're gonna have to work on a deadlift because that brings us to big lifts.
It
then.
does.
Brad, what did you do yesterday?
I pulled 805 for 5. Raw with suit.
So 805 pounds for a set of 5.
And we have this is all filmed, photographed. Like
Yeah.
the video will be out and about. You guys will be able to check it out. So
yeah. What was your best deadlift ever prior to this?
So my best deadlift ever was 800 for a double.
Okay. How were you going in expecting 5? Like if you would have got 4, would you been disappointed, or were
So I was hoping to pull like 3-ish, and then I was driving to the Massenomics gym. I'm like, it'd be pretty cool if I pulled 5.
Yeah.
It's always cooler than 3.
Yep.
So how did it feel? Did it feel easy? Did it feel like the worst thing that's ever happened? Or, like how would you describe 805 for 5?
It was exactly how you would think 805 for 5 felt.
Yeah, that's what you said at the time kind of too.
Yep.
It was pretty sweet. There's quite a few people at the gym. I mean, for our gym, quite a few people at the gym. And I think everyone was pretty fired up.
Yeah,
for it.
I didn't know what the plan. I thought you were doing a single. So then when I saw you going for another, I'm like, oh, he's going to do a double. And then it just kept going and going. I'm like, what is he doing?
Yeah.
Well, because I'm pretty sure that's the same thing I did last time I was here too.
Yeah, but it was less weight.
It was a lot less weight.
But you did it for multiple ones too. But it seems like once you get going, like once you get the first one, you can kind of just keep going. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep. That's basically how.
If you're getting it once, you're going to get it for
Like-
at least 3.
Yep.
You've got it down where at the top, you can do you at the top of the lift, do you kind of get your air?
Yep. So usually at the top, I'll just take that breath in to make sure I'm braced correctly.
Yeah.
And then lower it and right back up.
Yeah. And it does just kind of go right.
It does.
Yep.
It does. Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, you're kind of oversimplifying, but actually you're kind of all right there.
Yeah.
Up
Just
again.
comes right back up.
Well, because I know there's a lot of people out there that'll say you should never do touch and go reps.
Yeah. What do you? What's your opinion? I mean, you did them as touch and go reps. What's your opinion on touch and go reps as far as training?
So if I had to do reset each rep, there's no way I would have got 5.
Right.
But on the flip side of that coin, whenever I fail a deadlift, it's always at lockout. So you can never use a direct if you can pull X for whatever reps, that never works
But
out.
we have a chart in the gym that clearly shows
You just didn't go up to 805 by 5 though. So it's
there's a clear
mystery about
formula that
Yeah.
answers this question.
So I can't use that as a direct cut
Yeah.
if I do this I can do that. But in my
But
eyes
that might not be your purpose of doing it.
that's not the purpose.
Yeah.
So basically
Right.
I was able to lock out 805 5 times, which is
Right.
lockout's my weakest point. So in theory, if I can overload that lockout over time with those reps,
Yep.
because I've never basically had a deadlift in a competition where I couldn't get it off the floor.
Whereas someone like me who struggles from the floor to the knee, it probably makes more sense for me to be resetting every time, right?
Yep. And then you could even argue that once in a while, touch and go set.
Yeah, just to even get different stimulus in
Yep.
there.
Just to overload. I mean, even like I never do block pulls for the sake of improving my lockout because I found it doesn't transfer well. But block pulls once in a while can be great work for your upper back strength.
Mm-hmm.
So you wouldn't say reset or touch and go, not one is the end all be all, but they're both training tools and they both could be valuable depending on what you're doing, or they're probably both valuable all the time. It's in some.
I mean,
sense.
especially if you're a strongman, because you have some deadlifts where touch and go is allowed, and you have some where it's not. So if
you're a guy
they,
that
so
can
if
do
you
both, right?
like, I've seen guys that never train touch and go, and then it's allowed in a contest, and they still dead stop every rep. Well, you
And
probably
that's not
could you probably
advantageous.
could have got 2 more reps if you're able to touch and go those with control.
Yeah.
And then just with the aspect of lowering that weight slowly, I mean, you're gonna have that hypertrophy effect as well,
Yep.
versus dropping at the top and
Right.
resetting.
Right.
Well, either way, we were very impressed by it,
Yeah.
and we went as far as to guess that it'll probably be a Massenomics PR for a while.
Yeah, it probably won't get broken really soon, I would guess.
It could stand for over a year. We don't know for sure, but
Unless,
See,
when Brad comes
Yeah,
back.
when's the next time I'm gonna be here?
so there's that. We also went as far as to guess that it's probably a South Dakota PR.
Someone out there tell us, we do have quite a few South Dakota listeners. Let us know if you know of anyone from South Dakota that you think has ever done more than 805.
And then we started to think maybe even Minnesota. Has anyone done 805
What's your
for
thought
5?
on that being the
Would you say there's been less than 10 people that have ever done it in the state of South Dakota or of Minnesota?
For 805 for 5?
Yeah.
I don't even know if
there might
anyone.
just be one?
Yeah.
Well, our biggest guess was what has Brad Gillingham done? We know he's pulled
And-
400 kilos.
And
Yep.
we all felt like pretty safe with the assumption that he was totally capable of it. It's
Yeah.
just whether he ever did it or not.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the real mystery.
Yeah.
If he was ever dumb enough to. Let's see if I
Yeah.
can.
My only other person I could think of would be like Dave Oslund.
Yep,
or
Dave
Oslund.
Oslund.
But I don't know if he is that strong of a deadlifter or not.
Again, I don't know if he's. I don't want to call dumb enough, but
Yeah,
I think
right,
he's too
right.
methodical.
to go for a max set,
Yep.
like a really close to a max set of 5.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, again, because like I'm not directly training for something right now either.
Right.
So
So it's not setting you back from something.
Yeah. So
by
I
doing it.
wouldn't have done that in the middle of a prep for a contest.
Are you going to be burned out from that one for a while, or will your training this next week be?
I mean, it still technically wasn't a max single.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. Well, it was a max single though, right?
It was a 1 rep
Yeah.
PR that I did for 5. Yep.
Yeah. So that was a 1 rep. That's important to note. That was the most you've ever done for 1.
Yep.
But you did it for 5.
I mean, that was the same way when I pulled 800 for the first time.
Yeah.
I doubled it.
Yeah.
When I pulled 700 for the first time, I doubled it too.
Yeah.
Why not?
So I guess
Why waste your time doing just one when you can do
if
2?
you're already there, you
You've already put in
got
the
all
work.
set up and grabbed the bar and stuff.
So we're getting towards the end of our time here. Tanner has a segment that he likes to spring on me at the end of these episodes called Overrated or Underrated.
Yeah.
And he likes to just kind of throw some things out where I have to. If I want to give an explanation, I can.
Or
I
it could just be underrated.
Yeah, you don't have to
Overrated.
give
Yeah.
any reasoning for it. I think we should throw some overrated or underrated questions
Brad.
out at Brad.
Yeah.
I have a few in mind. If you need some time to think on
Yeah,
this,
you
can
go and
you can
let
go.
me
But
see if I
okay,
got anything.
overrated, underrated, Brad. Straps,
underrated.
underrated. Okay, overrated, underrated. Touch and go deadlifts,
Underrated.
underrated.
What was that one? You said underrated touch and go deadlift. So,
How
yeah.
about?
I got one.
Okay,
Overrated or underrated? Self checkout lanes at Walmart.
I would say underrated, so you don't have to talk to anyone.
Amen.
do you guys feel like Tyler brought this up to me, and it's been really sticking with me lately. Walmart doesn't have to pay someone to check you out now, but you still pay the same for your groceries. Does that ever kind of bug you? Like they're making you put in the work.
Yeah.
It's the same as if you went to a restaurant and you had to wait on yourself, and you still got to pay the same.
But do you prefer not having to talk to any,
I mean,
not
don't get me
having
wrong.
to-
I love
yeah.
the speed component to it of being faster,
Yeah.
but I kind of do feel like I'm getting cheated. Like Walmart's putting me to work, but I'm not getting paid for this.
But I do kind of value not having to talk to anyone else in the world outside of family and work in the gym.
You have a very
I mean,
valid point there.
if they're not gonna talk to me about lifting, do I really want to?
Not having to talk to anyone outside of 5 people I pre-approved. Okay, do you have another one lined up there, Tanner?
This is curious, I guess. Something we talked about last episode. In Minneapolis, do they have bird scooters yet? Do you know what a bird scooter
I
is?
do not know what a bird scooter is.
Okay.
Like these scooters that just
You can it's like ride sharing scooters. Like they
they're
just lay
all
on the
over
street
and
and
rent
you just
them, put
pick it
in
up
your-
and just
with your
go.
card.
Oh, so they do have like bicycles like that.
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
bikes, okay.
have
Yeah,
you
they
ever used
actually have
one
some
of those?
smart cars too.
Yeah,
Okay.
yep,
I
those,
like that.
have you used any of those
I have
before?
not.
Okay.
I try and stay away from
Minneapolis
downtown.
is harder for like bird scooters because it's
It has weather.
right like versus like Phoenix where like there could be like a foot of snow and then
Oh,
you're
and
getting
I
around
would
a
actually
little
love to see if that exists.
Yeah.
Maybe they do exist. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, since you don't have them, I don't know if you can fairly under or overrate them. But what would your opinion be on them if you had used them underrated or overrated bird scooters?
A scooter?
Yeah.
I would have to say overrated.
Oh, that one's pretty
They
controversial.
might not
there,
pull you
Brad.
around very well.
Actually, when you're on it, you're going to say it's underrated because even my weight, I was going slower than the people around me. So, yeah, you're going to feel it's underrated, I'm sure. All right. Any more brain busters?
I got one. So you grew up in Wisconsin. You live in Minneapolis.
Yep.
Underrated or overrated? The Minnesota Vikings.
Overrated.
Green Bay Packers.
Underrated.
Yeah. I
Okay.
assume that might be your answer.
Maybe not this year.
Yeah.
But I mean, if we want to look in general, big picture
Yeah.
here.
Okay, then in general, big picture, overrated, underrated, the state of Wisconsin,
I would have to go with underrated.
the state of Minnesota.
Slightly overrated.
South Dakota.
Underrated.
Yes. Very underrated. It's not rated that highly, so it's easy to be fall under, as underrated.
Yeah.
If you found something you liked about it.
I mean, this is like my favorite 5-hour drive.
Yeah.
A lot of people's favorite 5-hour drive.
Yeah. More people are making it like the other direction.
Typically, yeah.
Yeah.
Overrated, underrated, pre-workout.
I would say overrated, but I will never stop taking pre-workout.
So you're saying amongst the general populace, it's overrated, but not to say that you don't like to use it.
Yep.
So you like using caffeine as a tool?
Like I was in school for 10 years, so
Yeah.
I don't think I could ever
Yeah.
Okay.
break that habit.
Overrated, underrated supplements.
Overrated,
Overrated, underrated. Natural male enhancement.
underrated.
Okay. One final one. Overrated, underrated. Massenomics.
Underrated.
Severely.
Yep.
Well, that's a good point. So you've been working with us at Massenomics, but you're sponsored by Contraband?
Yep.
Correct. What's their official name like on Instagram? Do you know what it is?
So they have their Contraband Sports is their main one, and then they have the Contraband Black label, which is more of the male side of things, and the Contraband Pink label, which is more of the female side of things.
Are you a Pink label athlete? Or?
I mean, I would if they let me.
And then
I have been called a diva once or twice.
All right. Anything else that you wanted to get out in particular, or besides your penis?
I mean, I don't want to embarrass myself that much. I'd prefer everyone to focus on the deadlift.
I figured you're overcompensating for something. Enormous deadlift.
Well, is that going to do it?
Yeah, I think that'll do it. I guess we'd tell everyone, check us out on YouTube. You can see this full episode in video. Brad did actually have his penis out the whole time, so if you want to see it, you can check it out there on our YouTube channel at Massenomics. Go to Facebook, like us there. We pump out all the podcasts and some of our merchandise through Facebook. Go to our website. That's where you can find all of our merchandise. You can sign up for our newsletter at the bottom. And while you're at our website, some of the stuff you can buy. We have our Flex Flasks still in 3 different styles. Our Lift Shorts, the world's strongest and most expensive shorts. We have our shirts, the Bench Heavy shirt, one of our newer ones, which Brad was wearing in his
It's quickly
deadlift.
turning into everyone's favorite deadlift shirt.
Yeah, the Bench Heavy shirt, seen everywhere in the heaviest deadlifts around. Our Lift shirt, our still our flagship shirt, and then big news, we had all the sweatshirts out.
Mm-hmm.
We've got our 3 sweatshirts that you can get: the Camo Eagle, the Bench Heavy hoodie, and then the Lift Gunmetal Heather.
All
crew.
amazing pieces
Yep.
of apparel. The reviews are in.
Yep.
People are speaking. They love them.
They do love them, and we're still shipping those out each day. But even bigger news, we came out with all this new stuff recently. We already have another thing coming.
Another one.
So by the time you're hearing this, within 1 or 2 weeks after, we're gonna have a new shirt coming out, a never before seen Massenomics original design.
And if you like what we do,
You're gonna like this
what
one.
we're doing.
Yeah. So get you all of that stuff. Thanks everyone for listening. Where do we find you guys on Instagram?
You can find me at tomahawk_D.
Brad.
You can find me at Kind of Fat, Kind of Strong.
Oh, that's a good name too.
That
We didn't
is,
talk about
that
that
is,
much.
yeah.
Good handle. But someone did comment on your deadlift video. Kind of fat, really strong.
I saw that. It actually made me feel pretty special.
Yeah.
It's a warm community we have here, Brad.
So make sure to follow Brad and see him lift all those heavy things and things like fire hydrants, etc. You can follow the official Massenomics at Massenomics, and we'll catch you next time for 141.
See ya.
You just heard the Massenomics Podcast. With your ears, you're welcome. Check us out on Facebook, find us on Instagram at Massenomics, and make sure you visit Massenomics.com and buy some of that sweet Massenomics gear. From your friends at Massenomics Studio, home of the world's strongest podcast, stay strong.